All right, I mentioned that you can make adjustments in Photoshop as well, and I'm going to show you how to do that on this unedited photo here. So Photoshop and Lightroom share a lot of the same adjustments, of course, and this makes sense because Photoshop was the basis on which Lightroom was based, but it's a little bit hidden, and it's not as intuitive as it is in Lightroom. So in order to reach the adjustments, we have to go into the Adjustments panel. You can get that either on the toolbar here if you have it set there, or always down here at the bottom of the Layers panel. Within this Adjustments panel, you can see there's a whole bunch of different options, and these are very similar to what we saw in Lightroom. So we have brightness and contrast, levels, curves, exposure, vibrance, etc. I'm going to start with a color balance adjustment. Now in Lightroom, if we wanted to adjust the white balance of an image, we could go to Auto, or we could use the eyedropper to select a white point in the image. We can't do that in Photoshop, so we have to use these sliders to sort of try to mitigate the tones in our drawings that we want to eliminate. So for me, I want to kind of get rid of the greenish tinge that I find is coming through on this backboard here. So I'm just going to keep using the sliders to see if I can get that a little bit less green, but also not super red as well. So to double check my adjustment, I can just turn this on and off and see if I'm happy with it. So I'll leave it like that, and then I will add a brightness and contrast adjustment. I'm going to increase the brightness a little bit and the contrast as well. And finally, I'm going to use an exposure adjustment here to increase the exposure by 0.3. So if I want to copy these adjustments over onto other images that I have open, for example, this image here, what I have to do is copy all of these layers by selecting all of them, and then right click and go duplicate layers. And I will send those to that other image that I want to work on. So now you can see all of the adjustments have been added to this file, but I'm probably going to have to go in and individualize these a little bit based on the specific lighting requirements for this image. That's one way that you can copy over your adjustments. Another way is, and I'm just going to put those in the garbage, is to create an action. An action is a pre-recorded set of adjustments that you do to an image that you can then keep forever and play on other images. So I'm going to open the Actions panel here. And if you don't see this in your sidebar, you can just go up to Windows, Actions. So I'm going to start a new action by pressing this plus arrow here, and I'll give it a name called Model Photo Adjustments, and click Record. Now we see this little red dot here that indicates that everything I do from now on is being recorded. So everything from duplicating a layer, you can see that layer via copy, and then adding adjustment layers will be duplicated. So I'm going to try to duplicate what I had before. And if I'm done with my action, I can just press stop. And now this model photo adjustments action is available for me to use in any other image. So if I want to play it on this image, all I do is press play, and it plays through those exact things. So you see it has this layer copy. So if I need to get rid of something because I made a mistake in the action, you can just select that particular part of the action and put it into the garbage. So now if I play this again, it will just do exactly what I had done on the other one. So those are two ways that you can duplicate your adjustments onto other images. Another adjustment that we might want to make while we're working in Photoshop is straightening adjustments to make these edges more regular and planar to the surface. So we see this one is like kind of kicking out a little bit. This one is also kicking out a little bit. In order to do that, we need to double click the background and put it onto a layer that's not locked. So there's two ways to do that. You can double click it and just accept that, layer 0, or you can just unclick that lock and it will turn it into another layer called layer 0. I don't know why it changes the name, but it does. So that's what happens. Now we can go to Edit, and then transform, and we can use the distort command to begin pulling at the edges of this drawing. Now, I find it hard to distort when I don't have a grid to aim towards. So if you don't have your rulers turned on, you can just press Control R to turn them on. And then I'm just going to drag a guideline from this ruler over to the edge here and over to the edge here, so that I have two guidelines to sort of aim for as I'm making my adjustments. So I'm going to pull on this, this edge over here. I'm going to pull on this edge over here to try to straighten this out a little bit and targeting those guidelines that I have. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to press Enter. And if I want to get rid of my guides, you can just go to View and then Clear Guides. And if I want to crop this, I will press C for crop or access the crop tool over here. And now I'm going to choose 1-to-1 square. So this is the same 1-to-1 crop adjustment that we have in Lightroom, but in Lightroom it is not permanent. So all of the effects that you do on your images in Lightroom, you can easily go back to the way they are. It's just like a layer sitting over top of the image. In Photoshop, it's permanent. So if I press Enter, now I have this permanently cropped image, and I will save it as a JPEG to my computer. Okay, but what does Photoshop really excel at? I think it's great for altering the pixels of your image. So in this instance, we have a background that shows this blue clamp here and here, and then we have these like black zones of the background. And I would like to just make this all white so that it looks like my model has been shot against an all white background. This is where Photoshop is really good at editing. So you can grab the polygonal lasso tool over here and select an area around this clamp and the background that you want to alter. And once you have a selection made, you can go up to Edit, and you can go to Content Aware Fill right here, or you can access it using the Fill panel here and select Content Aware. So if we let Photoshop do its magic, we see it does a really, really good job of filling in that background and eliminating all of the mess that we had before. So Control D to deselect. And I'm going to go ahead and try that on this side as well. I think it's going to be a little tougher because this has a little bit more of a jagged and blurred edge, but we'll see how Photoshop does. All right, this has brought up a palette, and it wants us to sort of select areas where we're going to sample from. Now this seems a little bit complicated to me, so I'm actually going to cancel that and just go to Fill, Content Aware, and do it this way. I'm going to let Photoshop make all of the choices for me. So we see it did pretty good, but it has extended this part of the model into the frame, and we definitely don't want that. So there's a few other adjustment tools that we can use to fix that. Number one is the Spot Healing Brush tool. This allows us to just use our mouse as a brush, and we can use the parentheses tools to increase or decrease the size, just like we do with a normal brush. If we right click, we can select the hardness. So this is how soft the edge will be. If it's hard like this, it will be a really, really sharp, hard circle edge. I like to keep it down in the soft zone down here. So now if we go through these areas and click on them, it's basically telling Photoshop, okay, resample these areas and try again. Try to fill in these zones again. But it's not really getting this edge here. So another tool we can use is the Healing Brush tool. So this is the Spot Healing Brush tool. This is the Healing Brush tool. The Healing Brush tool takes a sample from another part of the image and then blends it with what you're working on. So if you hold down Alt, you can select a sample area. I'm going to select an area actually over here outside of this zone. And then I'm going to brush it over, and you see how Photoshop blends those two zones together. So that's working a lot better, and I'm going to use that to sort of blend in the rest of the edges here. So I'm just sampling by pressing Alt-click and then using the Healing Brush tool to kind of go over the areas that I think need more work. So this is like pretty good. I wouldn't, it's not perfect, but I wouldn't, it wouldn't bother me too much that this was super blurry. I've deselected it and now I'm just going to go back over these edges and kind of refine those. And then over here, I'll do the same. So I'll sample, blend, sample, blend, sample, blend. There's another tool you can use, and these three tools, the spot healing brush, the healing brush, and the clone stamp, are all kind of closely related. The clone stamp allows you to sample something and literally make a clone of it. So I'm just going to show you an example. If I copy using the Alt, by pressing down Alt and clicking over here on the edge, and then I draw it over here, it's literally going to redraw that exact thing over here. Now, that's not very useful to me right now, so I'm just going to undo that. But if I have a specific area of background that I want to copy over, I can sample it and brush it on like this. So you see how this kind of got a little muddy from our healing brush tool where it blended all the pixels. If I want the edge to be super sharp, I can sample a part of this edge and then bring it down, match it up, and that will create a new edge for me. So the clone brush tool is again another way that you can work with fixing pixels that you need to fix in the background. Okay, so we can use these tools to fix up other parts of our drawing. For example, I'm going to use the spot healing brush tool to click here on this line and then shift and click up to the top. And you see it just eliminates that transition between the materials. So now it looks like this is all one material. And I can go into this area of torn paper where I kind of accidentally tore the foam core, and I can fix that up. I can go down onto these little edges if I want to and try fixing those up. I might use the healing brush tool instead here to get a better sample. I can also use the spot healing brush tool to get rid of spots in my drawing. So if I just click on places where there's spots, you can see that it eliminates those. So this is how you can work with your model photos to make them look really good in Photoshop. I would recommend starting in Lightroom, doing your basic exposure, white balance, and lens adjustments, and then saving them as JPEGs, bringing them into Photoshop, and doing these other little fine-tuned adjustments that are better suited to Photoshop. And now you can just save these out as a JPEG. You can do it in two ways. You can just save as, and then save it as a JPEG here. Make sure that this ICC profile box is checked off. If this isn't checked off, then the color settings in this file will not match what you save out. It's a little bit weird. I don't know why Photoshop sometimes has this unchecked, but make sure this is checked off. Or alternatively, you can go export and save for web. This brings up an export panel that allows you to save this down as a smaller file. So I usually have mine at quality 60, and then you can see the preview size here is really small. So it doesn't really have that big of an impact on image quality. It just allows you to save a smaller file. So I often use this save for web.